almost like the clap as much as the clapper, Pete.
Yeah, of course.
Technically, I guess I am the clapper. Welcome back to the Rebel's Edge. I'm Jon Najarian. He is Pete Najarian, and Jared is handling the difficult tasks of putting the subjects up on the right side of the page, running the timers, all that usual stuff. We welcome you. Yeah, like that.
You gotta love it.
It is November 20th, 2023. Actually, it's the 21st. What am I saying, Pete? I mean,
you're behind, man.
I think I need more time for Thanksgiving, Pete. I need more lead time. But welcome, folks. We really appreciate you tuning into the Rebel's Edge. We hope that you enjoy it. Perhaps can find some things that you'd like to invest in or perhaps get out of because of what we're about to describe. So with that said, let's dive into the macro minute, Pete. Macro minute, I'm going to say, continues to be AI, but it also continues to be people a little bit worried. Last week, they were sort of dismissive of what might happen with Jerome Powell and the Fed, Pete. And this week, they're not quite so dismissive.
Well, yesterday you talked about this, John, and I just want to get it again because Nvidia. And why is that part of the macro minute? Well, the effects of what they will say tonight when they report their earnings and everything else, and they are AI, everybody knows all about them. I think that's going to be very meaningful. I think you were right to say it yesterday. I'm saying it today because we've got those earnings tonight. That will move the markets, not just the NASDAQ, not just tech. It's going to move the market. It's going to move the S&P, and it's going to have a huge effect. And I think it's going to be very, very interesting to see, can they give us a number that gives this stock another move to the upside? I'll tell you this, John, right now the options are saying we're looking for about an $80 to $100 move today. So we'll see.
Yeah, and that's out of a $400 stock, so it's still a pretty big move.
500.
$500 stock, yeah. Just crossed back over 500 now. Yeah. All right, let's talk about fantastic futures.
Fantastic futures.
Well, if you hadn't been watching oats, and oats, of course, we feed them to people as well as to animals, Pete. And oats were 500 plus in August. And they've come all the way back down to 330. Now they're rebounding, and it's up about 3% today, but that's a pretty significant drop from 500 to 330. So that's what I picked for a fantastic future today.
And John, I picked this about a week or so ago. I'm going to go right back there to sugar. And why am I going to sugar? Sugar's up year to date 54%. So it's just something I think that you've got to keep a little bit of an eye on this thing. It's been an absolute massive move all year, literally bottom left to upper right. And it's been in that direction, and it's been very, very steady. And each and every day we're watching this tick just a little bit higher and a little bit higher. I think that's definitely something worth at least keeping your eye on. Not saying you should be trading it, not saying anything about that, but it sure is telling that this is moving the way that it is, and it has not slowed down at all.
Right. And other than corn syrup, Pete, which is another sweetener, sugar's in damn near everything. I mean, between those two, Pete, corn syrup or just raw sugar, it's in an awful lot of products that get onto our grocery shelves. So worth noting. All right, let's talk about some stocks, Pete. We've got Symbiot, which is an AI robotics play. This was up over 20%. Basically, they beat on earnings. Revenue beats as well. They rocketed the revenue higher by about 60% year over year. So if you're growing your revenue that fast, I guess some people could even look at this, Pete, as a look ahead to Nvidia, because anything with AI in it, even if it's AI robotic systems, is something people are going to focus on.
Yeah, what a great report they gave, John. And then you even look at their guidance. Their guidance was extremely strong as well. Got a great balance sheet. The volumes are there. It's a stock that's making a really nice big move today. And to your point, with revenue jumping 60% year over year, That is an incredible number. They are doing everything right. They are absolutely clicking right now. And I think this is one of those names, as you said, this is giving us a little bit more of a lead into what we talked about just a second ago, fantastic futures with Nvidia. The macro minute with Nvidia. It's going to be interesting. This is a really, really cool company, I think. And boy, John, the volumes today are absolutely off the charts.
Yeah. Well, and anytime you see volumes moving like that, Pete, it's noteworthy. And it's an indication that the big people that commit big capital are in whatever that is. And in this case, Symbiot, SYM, doing pretty darn well today. And that's why we're seeing that big move. All right. How about Hibbett Sports, Peach? HIBB. Slight decrease in their Q3 net sales, but nonetheless, this one just moving to the upside, double digits. Full year 2024 diluted guidance is $8 to $8.30. That's because they really believe operational efficiency is really starting to pay dividends for Hibbett, HIBB. That's why, partly at least, why they're getting that double-digit pop.
Yeah, it's a major move to the upside, 16%. You don't sneeze at something like that, John. Their e-commerce sales up 17%, and that's something pretty strong. They have really done everything right. They're in the right position right now. When you look at the guidance is strong. You're really just looking at almost perfection again, and we just talked about that with Symbotic, but this one as well, doing a great job, and a lot of it having to do with what they're doing from the e-commerce side. That is something that we talk about all the time. Can you do that? Are you able to get across and not just have it in the stores themselves, but on outside on the computer side of things and looking at that e-commerce side of ordering and everything else? They are killing it, John. This is a well-deserved move to the upside, I think, right now. And I think this is a stock that might have a little bit more room than it's already showing us today.
Yeah, well, like you said, Pete, 14%, 16%. Sooner or later, it's really big numbers. And yeah. DKS also seeing a double-digit gain today. So apparently, we were willing to go and spend in those two places. At least that's what the earnings today show. Let's take a look at Burlington, Pete, which is another retailer, of course, like Dick's and like Hibbett. This is something, bricks and mortar is their primary business, but like Pete said, they do a lot of digital as well. I know when people think of Marshalls and TJ Maxx and maybe Burlington, they don't really think of them that way, Pete, but they enhance and perhaps get rid of a little extra through their digital sales. Well, this one moving up double digits today as well. This is a strong report and pretty much across the board. Comparable sales, same-store sales up 6%. I mean, like I say, I didn't see anything bad in this report at BURL.
I didn't see anything bad either, John. I think that's why we're seeing the kind of move that it's making, whether it's 16%, 18%, whatever it may be. This is a stock that's made a nice move to the upside for the right reasons. They absolutely crushed it as well. They beat on the metrics that we all talk about all the time. Their earnings, that was a pretty nice beat. Total sales, 12%. Year over year, up 12% year over year. These are big numbers. I mean, these are impressive deliveries when, we came into this week knowing it's a big retail week and we're hearing from so many. We just didn't know exactly what to expect because we know the consumer's a little bit strapped, everything else, but are they willing to go a little bit deeper into credit card debt? Probably. And I think that's exactly what we're seeing here right now, John.
Well, hopefully you and I aren't going to get deep into credit card debt, but as long as you pay them off every month, folks, use the card as much as you want. But if you're borrowing with that card, in other words, financing, it's pretty rough because it can be as much as 27, 28%. That'll take a bite out of your check. All right, let's talk about American Eagle Outfitters, down 17%. Abercrombie and Fitch, likewise, ANFP, trading to the downside hard today, even though they put up decent numbers, Pete. But as opposed to a place like Dick's Sporting Goods or Hibbett or even Burlington, those three that I just named, they're selling other people's inventory. they're selling somebody else's, whether it's, the sporting goods side, and they're selling Nike and Adidas and Puma or whatever, Pete, or whether it's something at Burlington, which is sort of like TJ Maxx, they're selling excess inventory and things like that. When you're talking about something like American Eagle, you're going in there because you want to buy what they have made, that brand, or Abercrombie and Fitch. You want that brand of jeans or jean jacket. That's why I think they're not doing as well, Pete, because the selection is limited to just either of those two names when you go into either of those two stores.
And the numbers were, as you said, though, John, the numbers themselves actually looked okay, but they weren't something that blew you away. And I think part of the issue also was their guidance. Now, they actually gave you a little bit higher guidance, but the problem is it's lower than what the expectations were. And anytime you just don't keep up with what everybody else is putting out there of what they're looking for, that's always going to be something that's going to be received by the folks out there to sell. And that's exactly what we're seeing here. Pretty big, substantial move to the downside. You and I just went through a number of different names where positive up 12%, 16%, 18%, whatever it might be. This stock, last I looked, was down about 17%. Everybody else was going up, and these guys are going down. And I think it all does come down to that guidance. The guidance, even though they raised it, it's below where folks were looking. And because of that, they are not hesitant just to turn and burn and say, see you later.
Yeah, this is one, Pete, that it's sort of a head scratcher of sorts because the numbers were pretty much in line. But even though they gave positive guidance into the holiday shopping season at American Eagle, AEO, even that, Pete, wasn't enough to cause the stock to turn around at all. It was just kind of laying there on the downside. It opened down and stayed there. All right. What do you got for your Red Zone Sports today, Pete?
I think we'll zip through it pretty quick, John, but I thought it would be fun because we had the Monday Night Football game last night, and you and I talked about it. We highlighted this one. We talked about, hey, a rematch of the Super Bowl. So you get that. Now you get a Monday night game. And on top of everything else, we were wondering, what do these two teams look like right now if they're going to be playing now, and potentially what if they're going to be playing later into 2024? Well, one thing we learned, and you and I were talking about this, Kansas City had a real problem yesterday. How many drops, John? You were talking about this to me before, but the drops were pretty outrageous, right?
Yeah, well, 26 drops on the season, Pete. So that means Mahomes hits these guys in the hands or puts it between the 8 and the 7 on their jersey, and they don't catch it. 26 times. So as you guys could imagine, if you're putting a drive together, that's a drive killer because, on third down, he scrambles as he usually does, gets away as he frequently does, and then puts the ball right where it's supposed to be, and his guys are dropping it. Now, on the is the glass half full or half empty, Pete? I'd say, well, if they catch half of those balls, they probably win those games, including the one last night. But the problem is that it's either a confidence thing or maybe there's too many distractions, Pete. I don't know, but they weren't dropping these balls when Taylor Swift's relationship with Travis Kelce wasn't the big news of every time Kansas City played. Now,
yeah, Mr. Pfizer is one of those guys contributing to this whole thing for sure. There's no doubt about it. Well, John, I think it's pretty interesting. You look at the division leaders right now, whether it's in the AFC or the NFC, and it's dominant, right? You look at Philadelphia, pretty damn good, right? I mean, these guys have done everything. And to quote Hurts, they play well even when they play poorly, they can win games. And that's what they were talking about even yesterday. They didn't feel like they played all that great either, John, but they managed to find ways to win football games. That's what good teams do. So I think it's going to be really fun as we get a little bit deeper into this. We're not that far away from getting to the playoffs because here we are late November. It makes it fun, and there's a lot of teams still in it. And I think if you go through it, Baltimore looks pretty outstanding. Yeah, they've lost a game here or there, but I think they look outstanding. Cleveland, whoever's quarterbacking, doesn't matter. The defense is suffocating people. I mean, they're unbelievable. So there are teams that, they've had some dips here and there because of injuries, whatever. Look at San Francisco. Purdy just had a perfect quarterback rating the other day, John. So it just shows you that there's a lot of good teams out there. We talk about parity all the time, but as much as we do have parity, let's be honest. It kind of comes down right now to Philadelphia sitting at the very top, everybody else below them. And then you go over to the AFC. My pick still would be Baltimore. I know Kansas City looks pretty damn good most of the time, but they do have those drops. They've got a couple of games, but I just look at Baltimore. I look what they're doing offensively, defensively, special teams. That team is pretty special. And if they can get there, I think they're the ones that really give the NFC the most fits just because of the guy who's playing at quarterback.
Yeah, I can't deny that, Pete. I mean, Lamar is a special player. And that team has always, ever since the other Harbaugh has coached there, they've always had a great defense. You're lucky to get Ray Lewis, but they were smart enough to draft him. How about that? And they get these gigantic defensive tackles that, just like you said about Cleveland, they're smothering. So every once in a while, somebody gets lucky, they make a catch or they get a strip and a fumble or perhaps even an interception, although those are pretty rare against Lamar. But I think this is a very strong team that's going to challenge anybody that they play.
Yeah. Next, John, let's hit this just because you and I were right. Everybody else didn't really understand it, but I think that they finally figured it out. The NCAA decided who's their top 4, right? And you're looking at the AP. The AP poll comes out. And I think it's the right thing because you and I said it yesterday. It was the right thing. Florida State is now dropped down. And why have they dropped down? Well, they're undefeated, but they lost that quarterback. And that quarterback was one heck of a guy, John. His numbers were off the charts. We talked about that yesterday. And we thought maybe they would drop. You put Washington in there after that. But we still have the weekend of great games, right? You've got Oregon, Oregon State. Oregon's one loss was to Washington. At Washington, and they had opportunities to win that game. They didn't because they made a lot of decisions to go for it on 4th down, and some of that ended up biting them, and that's just the way it goes. But if they get to the Pac-12 championship, John, down there in Vegas, and if they can beat Washington, that gives them, I think, a shot to go leapfrog over Florida State and Washington. And tell you what, the Pac-12 deserves it. I looked at them this year, John. You and I have been talking about it all year long. You look at the whole grouping of what they've got from UCLA, who's had a heck of a year. I was out with Brian Cornell just last night. We were talking about football. We were talking about UCLA and the dominance that they've had this year. How about Chip Kelly? Doesn't get talked about very much, John, but the guy, I think right now they're already got their 9 wins and they're looking for number 10. They've got something special going on at UCLA as well.
Yeah, and Pete's name dropping there, folks, because the guy who was out to dinner with, Brian Cornell, that just happens to be the CEO of Target. So, and by the way, this isn't a Target up or down, but Best Buy, Pete, I noticed that they had a tough one. They were down about 6%. BBY, another Minneapolis-based company, because Pete's all about Minneapolis-based companies. And but to flip it back to UCLA, that team is one that nobody really wants to play right now, Pete. I would say those guys as much as Oregon State. And that's why that Oregon State-Oregon, obviously in-state rivalry. They don't like each other. The one team's backed by Nike, and has 50 different types of jerseys and helmets and all the rest that they have. And then you've got the Beavers, and those are some mean-ass Beavers, Pete. I saw them play against Colorado, and they didn't even play their best game. But the quarterback that came over from Clemson, whose name I can't pronounce, just lit them up. And I think he could do that against Oregon. That's going to be a really tough game. And so don't be surprised if Oregon State comes out on top of that one in the rivalry weekend, Pete. I mean, luckily Cal beat Stanford, right? So maybe we've got more going in Oregon versus Oregon State as well.
Yeah, Oregon State's a good football team. They really do it on defense too, which the Pac-12 generally is not known for defense. They're known for all the great offenses and everything else, but Oregon State plays pretty good on defense. Oregon plays pretty good on defense. So I think that's another part of why Oregon and Oregon State not only had successful years, but why I think Oregon has a really good shot if they can win out. I think that then the second shot, I think they take Washington down. But we'll see. We'll see. First, they got to get there. I mean, this thing is not a done deal yet, but it's always fun talking the sports, John, and it should be a lot of fun around the Thanksgiving time. We're not quite there, but here we are at Tuesday. It's not that far away either.
That's right. November 21st. We'll be back November 22nd tomorrow with the final Rebels Edge of the week because, of course, folks, markets aren't going to be open on Thursday. So our usual Thursday Rebel Edge won't be on there. And Friday is only a half day of trading. So tune in tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern time and get your fill of the Rebels Edge for this week. And happy Thanksgiving to all of you if you're traveling tomorrow.